The Hunchback in the Park by Dylan Thomas, 1914 to 1953. The hunchback in the park, a solitary mister, propped between trees and water from the opening of the garden lock that lets the trees and water enter until the Sunday sombre bell at dark. Eating bread from a newspaper, drinking water from the chained cup that the children filled with gravel, in the fountain basin where I sailed my ship, slept at night in a dog kennel, but nobody chained him up. Like the park birds he came early, like the water he sat down. And mister, they called, "Hey, mister!" the truant boys from the town, running when he had heard them clearly, on out of sound. Past the lake and rockery, laughing when he shook his paper, hunchbacked in mockery, through the loud zoo of the willow groves, dodging the park keeper with his stick that picked up leaves. And the old dog sleeper, alone between nurses and swans, while the boys among willows made the tigers jump out of their eyes to roar on the rockery stones, and the groves were blue with sailors. Made all day until bell time, a woman figure without fault, straight as a young elm, straight and tall from his crooked bones, that she might stand in the night after the locks and chains. All night in the unmade park, after the railings and shrubberies, the birds and the grass, the trees, the lake, and the wild boys, innocent as strawberries, had followed the hunchback to his kennel in the dark. Okay, this poem is by Dylan Thomas. Dylan Thomas was born in Swansea in Wales. His father was a teacher. Dylan Thomas is very famous as a poet and a writer, I think particularly for Under Milk Wood, which was a play for voices. Let's see, he was renowned as an alcoholic and got horribly drunk and died at the age of 39 from excessive alcohol, from alcoholism. So what's this about? Well, this is very typical of Dylan Thomas. It's describing a scene. It's describing a hunchback in the park. It's describing a poor old vagabond living in the park, who has nowhere to go. But this is very typically of Dylan Thomas. It's very evocative, very descriptive. It gives us a very good image of what we can see. So the hunchback in the park, a solitary mister, propped between trees and water. So in the park there's a hunchback, yeah? And notice a solitary mister. Mister, he doesn't have a name, yeah? I think maybe he's alone because of his hunchback, because of his deformity. And he lives between the trees and the water in the park. From the opening of the garden lock, so he lives there from the moment that they open the park with the lock that lets the trees and water enter until Sunday sombre bell at dark. So this person spends his whole day in the park, and the reason he spends his whole day here is because he's homeless. He doesn't have a job, he doesn't have a home, and he lives in the park. This is his home. Eating bread from a newspaper, drinking water from the chained cup that the children filled with gravel. Okay, so he eats bread from a newspaper. This is, to me, this is like feeding the ducks. Yeah? And he drinks water from a cup that is clearly chained to the drinking fountain so that nobody will steal it. But here, this chained, it also is evocative that he is a prisoner, a hostage of his situation, and he can't get out. Yeah? So, drinking water from the chained cup that the children filled with gravel in the fountain basin where I sailed my ship. So the children play at filling this cup with stones. So he is almost like it's part of the place. The children are cruelly teasing him. Yeah, and the gravel comes from a fountain where I, and this is the writer, sailed my ship. So this is the I, this is Dylan Thomas looking at the scene and describing it. Slept at night in a dog kennel, but nobody chained him up. So here the hunchback, he sleeps at night in a dog kennel. Well, I think this is some sort of cardboard box or some sort of house or some sort of structure that the hunchback has made for himself. And it's like he is chained to this dog kennel. Yeah, that he is chained to his situation, that he can't get out, despite the fact that there is no physical chain. The mental chain is there. Like the park birds, he came early. So he comes early to the park, like the birds. Like the water, he sat down. So his arrival at the park, he sits down and he's like the water. He's part of the park. And Mister they call, hey Mister. The truant boys from town. So they call him Mister. Yeah, the boys from town. Truant means they don't go to school. So they're teasing him. They're trying to hurt him. They're joking and talking about him. They call his name, but he doesn't have a name. He's just Mister. He's not a real person. And then he runs from these boys, running when he had heard them clearly, on out of sound. So the truant boys, they shout at him, Mister! And he runs away from them. He's frightened of them. And he runs past the lake and rockery. So these are features in the park. Laughing when he shook his paper, hunchbacked in mockery. So he's trying to escape his tormentors, these boys. And clearly as well, we can see though that he's mad. Yeah? He laughs when he shakes his paper. And people are laughing and making him suffer for his hunchback. Through the loud zoo of the willow groves. So it's like he's an animal in the zoo. The willows are a type of tree. The willow groves, it's like a little forest of willows. So he hides or lives in this zoo in the park, dodging the park keeper. So he's escaping from the park keeper, the person who looks after the park. and the park keeper has a stick that he uses to pick up leaves. And this park keeper, maybe he's a person in authority, and he might stop the boys from teasing the man. But I don't think the park keeper likes him at all. He doesn't want him there. He wants him out. And the old dog sleeper, alone between nurses and swans. Okay, so I think the old dog sleeper, I think this is a nickname for the hunchback, yeah? The old dog sleeper, he's the old dog that sleeps in the kennel, yeah? And he's alone between nurses and swans. Okay, so he's found a safe place for a short time. He's found refuge with the swans, while the boys among willows made the tigers jump out of their eyes. So now the boys, the truant boys, are playing. Yeah, they're imagining tigers, or imagining being tigers. Yeah, and these tigers come out of their eyes to play in the rockery in the park. And the groves were blue with sailors. Yeah, so he sits alone while these boys are playing, and I think he's able to enjoy the swans, which I think maybe the groves were blue with sailors. I think this is what he's saying. Made all day until bell time. So he continues here all of the day until the park bell rings. A woman figure without fault, straight as a young elm. So I think now he finds a beautiful young woman in the park, yeah, and he compares her to a young elm tree, straight and tall from his crooked bones. Yeah, and I think he's perhaps longing for a person like this, that she might stand in the night after the locks and chains. So he sees her, and I think he's imagining or longing to be with a person like this. Yeah, maybe he's imagining this woman. Yeah, he's maybe creating this beautiful woman in his mind. All night in the unmade park, after the railings and shrubberies, the birds, the grass, the trees and the lake, and the wild boys as innocent as strawberries. So I think now he's thinking about his day, and he's now gone back home, or to his dog kennel. Or maybe he has a place to sleep in the park. And he thinks about the park and the railings and the shrubs and the birds and the grass and the trees and the lake and the boys who try to tease him, who are as innocent as strawberries. And all of that has followed the hunchback to his kennel in the dark. So all of these things are within his mind, and he's thinking about the park as a beautiful place, yeah, but this is a beauty that he cannot find inside himself, and these memories have followed him back to the place where he lives, to his kennel in the dark. So enough. If you enjoyed the video, give it a rating, subscribe to my channel, and I will see you soon. Bye for now. The Hunchback in the Park by Dylan Thomas.